This is Metrosource Minis, the official podcast of Metrosource Magazine and home of short-form interviews with your favorite personalities from the LGBTQ world and beyond. Quick, fun, and informative. It's Metrosource on the go. Out and proud since 1990. Well, hello and hello. This is Metrosource Minis. I'm your host, Alexander Rodriguez. Did you know scissoring isn't a thing? I didn't. Well, today we talked to Daryn Carp, the co-host of Scissoring Isn't a Thing podcast, featured in Metrosource's top podcast to listen to. So as a former NBC page rocking that gray suit that Kenneth made famous on 30 Rock, Daryn came right out of the page program to assist one of the most influential pop culture icons currently on television, of course, Mr. Andy Cohen. The two started Most Talkative production company, and since then, Daryn has become a regular fixture for a number of Bravo TV's digital content, alongside some of your favorite and some of your not so favorite Bravo celebrities. In addition to the podcast, Scissoring Isn't a Thing, Daryn also co-hosts a weekly Oxygen podcast, Martinis and Murder, which dives into the actual crime and the theories surrounding each murder while drinking an appropriately themed cocktail. The podcast has millions of downloads and was featured in the New York Times as well as Cosmopolitan. Have you taken your Cosmopolitan test? Because she doesn't need to sleep, she also hosts Reality Check for People TV, which is a fun, fast-paced digital talk show with all of your favorite reality TV stars. And she also created an executive-produced tiny talk show for Quibi, which is hilarious and odd. My favorite combination. Please welcome Daryn Carp.
Woo! Woo! Just me cheering for myself. I mean, that opening music, Alex, I had that thing going. I felt ready. You're on my lovely set of People TV Reality Check right here. So you're getting an inside look at my apartment right now.
Oh, God. Well, if I didn't have this banner behind me, God knows what you would see, because I'm in my bedroom, too.
How many dead bodies do you have behind there, Alex?
Oh, God. I wish I had some bodies. I'm so lonely. This quarantine is a joke. Of course, my dating life hasn't really changed, though. Okay, so scissoring isn't a thing. Are you sure? Please explain.
Okay, well, see, this is the debate that I had because my co-host Liz Cully and I, we met. We were starting to become friends. One of our mutual friend did that thing where it's like, you're gay, you guys will love each other, and people need to realize that shouldn't necessarily be the only qualification for people being friends. But I digress. And we started talking about all like the random crazy stuff that people ask us, specifically lesbian women. Who's the man one? What are you going to, do you need a dad in the relationship? Oh, you just haven't met a good guy yet. How do you guys have sex? That's a big one. And so I thought of the name just as something that was going to be A, eye-catching, and B, certainly playing the stereotype of lesbians on its head. And both Liz and I disagree about whether or not scissoring isn't a thing. So it's certainly up for debate.
Okay. Well, and I love that that's part of your show, too, is you guys talk about everything, or you ladies talk about everything. I have to stop saying guys. You ladies talk about everything, stuff that people might be a little afraid to talk about.
Yeah.
So I just have to say, I'm so entrenched in the LGBT community. I'm supposed to be on the up and up as to what's politically correct. And I have to say, when I found out that you were a lesbian, in my mind, I said, wow, she doesn't act or look like a lesbian, which is so wrong. And it just shows you that we have so much farther to go in terms of our mentality and our thinking, even within the LGBT community. But I have to say, your sexuality is not first and foremost in your hosting, such as like a Ross Matthews or a RuPaul, where it's like, yes, we're hosting. It's kind of really out there. Do you think lesbian representation is kind of swept under the carpet, even in the age of an Ellen?
I see you're using carpet there as part of the lesbian trope. I don't know how I feel about that.
I didn't even think about that.
Let me just say, I get a lot of like, oh, you don't look like a lesbian or this and that, or you don't seem like that. I mean, I'm not necessarily offended by it. I understand why people do. There are stereotypes that do exist, but they do exist for a reason. Sometimes most stereotypes happen to be true as a general thing. But I don't take offense to that at all. So I would, when people say that to me, I just think that it's like more people are coming out now than ever before because we're in an environment under which people can feel safe to do that. And so I think the face of a gay man or a lesbian woman or gender nonconforming or trans has certainly changed, and it's certainly evolving. And so we're all evolving along with it. So I don't want you to think that I'm offended by anything you said, because I'm not. I mean, I think in terms of lesbian representation in television, I mean, yeah, we have the classic ones, right? I mean, I think everyone thinks of Ellen. I think everyone thinks of Rosie, and they're great. Certainly Ellen really fought for gay rights. I mean, she lost her job for 3 years in the 90s after coming out on national television. So let's not forget
that too. And people definitely are forgetting that. Right now with the controversy with her show, it's like, she put in her journey and she put in her miles.
Right. She deserves everything that she's gotten. Like, I know there's some controversy coming out with her now, but I give her my utmost respect to her for really putting people's, feet in the flames here. And they had to kind of answer a lot of things like, you like her and she's also gay. So get over those like horrible things that you're thinking about gay people. I mean, obviously the 90s were a different time than they are right now. This was, 30-ish years ago. But I do find that there's not that much lesbian representation in the way of that gay men necessarily are represented on television. Certainly my boss, Andy Cohen, he's very gay, but doesn't necessarily come across in the same way that maybe a Ross Matthews might. And so
that's exactly right.
And, Anderson Cooper, look at him. I mean, no one's ever being like, oh, that gay CNN guy, no one's ever saying that. I mean, being gay is like the 7th thing on the list for Anderson Cooper and probably Andy Cohen and even me. But, I always have been open and honest about my sexuality. I certainly don't say it right in the forefront because I want people to know that being gay to some extent should be a little bit boring now. Like you almost shouldn't be able to tell. And I think that's good because gay people were just like the rest of you, I mean, we're just like everyone else. And so I kind of want to mix in with the masses. I think we fought so long to be treated equally. And so if you don't know that I'm gay or you're surprised by it, I guess that's kind of a compliment to me, only because it just goes to show that it's kind of a normal thing now. You know what I mean? But I definitely want more lesbian representation on television, and I hope to be one of those people.
Well, you certainly are. And I love that you said that because being gay is part of who we are, but we also have this skill set and we work hard at our skill set, such as you hosting a variety of different shows digitally, you hosting podcasts. These are skill sets that exist whether or not we know who you're sleeping with. And so the more conversation we have as a whole human being, I think that really kind of opens conversations with people, especially in today's social and political climate, that we might not have that conversation with because you can't jump out of the box and say, like, I'm gay. Let's talk about, equal rights. It's like, no, you have to get to know people, especially the conservative side, and let them know that you're just like them. You're just shop better and wear better clothes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're just fancier people, but it's interesting because my co-host, Liz Cully, she identifies as bisexual. I'm not outing her in any sort of way. We ask every single person that comes on our podcast how you identify. Some people don't want to answer it, in which case we just want to know why. That might be offensive to some people. Some people describe themselves as tall. Other people have, Buck Angel was one of the guests on our podcast. Absolutely incredible guy. He described himself as a pig and as a man with a vagina. That is how he described himself.
Yes.
So I think normal people would say pig. That's so offensive. Not to him. That's his identification moniker. And so with Liz identifying as bi, she talks a lot about bi erasure. There's a lot of talk about being gay, being trans, being lesbian. But bi people a lot of times are like, pick a side. You can't get both, And, I think bi has a different connotation than maybe pansexual, which is sort of the new age term for it. But there are a lot of similarities where people are like, choose a gender, choose this. And it's like, it's not always about genitalia, people. Sometimes it just happens to be that you fell in love with a guy or fell in love with a woman. And that's just the way it is. And so there's a lot of conversations about that as well.
Well, and the whole talk about bisexuality, when somebody comes out as bi, everybody kind of rolls their eyes and like, oh, they just don't want to come out as fully gay yet. It's their stepping stone to come out later. It's like, like, no, this is a validated community and there's different levels of bisexuality. Like you said, I can be attracted to a woman emotionally and in other ways too. I've dipped my toe in the lady pond, but I wouldn't classify myself as bisexual. But, after a few martinis and if it's Patti LuPone, I'm going to go for it.
That's literally the gayest man saying that. Like, you cannot even pretend to be bi if the woman that you're going to dip your toe in for is Patti LuPone. I'll just say that you are not fooling anyone here. But I will say that I have dipped my toe very heavily. I've dated men before. I've slept with men before. I'm not a gold star gay, which is kind of this term that some people find offensive. I don't, but it's just kind of this catch-all phrase for someone who's like pure gay in a way, that they haven't really dipped their toe on the other side. And listen, I mean, I've dated men before. I've had sex with men, as I've said, and I know that I'm fully gay. You know, that I know that like I can find men attractive, but the emotional relationship of something that I can really develop, I want it to be with a woman.
Now, Darren, what do you think the mainstream still needs to be educated the most about LGBTQ culture? Because I know that that's a mission you guys have on Scissoring Isn't a Thing.
I mean, there's a lot, I think, that still needs to be done within the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, first off, you know, I mean, sometimes it's like the more we come together, sometimes I find the more separated we are, you know. I mean, Dave Chappelle kind of does this sketch about the L's hating the G's, but we all hate the B's. And then the T's are kind of getting into our thing, but we don't want the T's there. And he does a whole bit about it. And, you know, it's funny. It's Dave Chappelle, but I think it's actually sort of caked in reality for a lot of people. You know, I mean, even within our own, I'm just going to use the general moniker of queer community. I just prefer that as kind of this people that aren't cishet, if you will, people that aren't cisgender, heterosexual, pretty much are queer otherwise. And for me, I mean, listen, I think that every lesbian can be a lesbian, but there's different definitions of feminism. You know, people have a different feeling on trans people being in our community than not, because it's kind of a different thing. It's not necessarily a sexuality. It's a gender identity, which can be different. I have no problem with it, but I definitely think the language that we use around other people, just because we're all gay and all in this queer community, doesn't mean all of us have it all figured out, and doesn't mean that our own biases aren't inherent within us. And so to constantly have those conversations, I think is really, really important. Another thing that I think is important for everyone, including just people not in the queer community, especially people in the queer community, is to give other people a little bit more of a break. You know, I'm a little dismayed by how quickly people are to have these gotcha moments and to be so quickly offended. You know, I mean, the reason we started Scissoring Isn't a Thing is because people say these outlandish questions to us, like, you know, asking me how I have sex. I mean, I just would never go up to a heterosexual couple and say, like, how do you have sex? I certainly wouldn't go up to a gay couple and ask that. Yeah. And maybe it's just more obvious with those types of couples than it is for lesbians. But like the outlandish things that are said to us is like totally normal for other people and totally not normal for me. But that doesn't mean that they're saying it in an offensive way or trying to make me pissed off. It just goes to show that they might be a little bit more ignorant, or they don't really realize that it might be an offensive question. And I'm happy to teach anyone. I just think people in and out of the queer community are a little too quick to be so offended. And, you know, I mean, the first time I came out to my parents, it wasn't like my mom was so like, woo, yeah. You know, she had questions for herself. I mean, they're both very accepting, but I just find it hard to believe that I'd have to, like, unless my mom had the perfect response of everything, that she was a homophobe just isn't correct. You know, like I had to give her a little bit of time to acclimate, and I'm glad that I did, because we have a better relationship than most.
Well, and if you don't ask a question in any way, and if you don't feel comfortable asking a question, you're never going to know, you're never going to be educated, and you're never going to go to that next level of understanding. And plus, if you want to understand a culture such as the trans culture, and you're you know, faced with such animosity or such anger, you're never going to want to try and incorporate yourself into that community or understand that community again. It's so dangerous right now. And I totally agree with you. And
I really don't like when people are like, you know, it's not my job to educate you. Well, kind of is, right?
Yeah, because, it is.
You can read as much as you want to read about lesbian sex, but like, what if you have a question that isn't in a book? Where are you supposed to learn these things? You want to ask a friend, right? You want to ask someone that you think you can trust, that will basically take maybe an ignorant question and can help you shape an opinion and help you shape a question for future reference. So it might not be my job to sit there 10 hours a day and give gay lectures, but it kind of is my job to represent the lesbian community as best that I can and help people understand that language going forward. I have no problem correcting someone or having an intelligent conversation with a person.
Well, it's funny, you mentioned Buck Angel. I know people from the trans community have really come after him because of the way he talks.
Yes.
And, you know, and he is confident in who he is and what he has to say. And he's a representation of a member of the trans community, but his own community is coming out against him. And he has done so much activism and visibility. Okay. So did you ever think that reality TV was going to be such a huge part of your life?
Well, listen, I mean, I grew up watching the Osbournes. I grew up watching Real World. And so I always wanted it to be a part of my life. I guess I didn't really realize that it was going to be so big. I mean, I want to be a game show host. I thought I was going to start off being a reporter in, a local market and kind of moving my way up in order to get on air. It wasn't like I was as obsessed with reality. There was a little bit less reality back in the day when I was growing up than there is now, because it's really proven to be such a great format. But when I started with Andy, I never saw an episode of The Housewives. I don't think I watched Bravo. And so to me, it was kind of the slow evolution of what am I interested in? How can I talk to people? Who do I want to talk to? So growing up, no, but definitely now. I mean, I can't imagine my life without it, because truth of the matter is, politics, true crime, it's kind of all reality, like it's sort of, it's all pop culture, if you will. And sort of, that's taken a hold of almost every single piece of information we've been getting, whether you're watching cable news or you're watching VH1. And I'm lucky to be a part of it, and I'm lucky to see how it's evolved, but I love the format of reality television.
And it's so surreal to see the Osbournes back in reality TV. They have like a ghost show, and then they're back kind of as a family again. It's so weird to see. So how many hours a week do you spend watching TV?
That's a really good question. I want to say a week, 20, maybe 20 in total, maybe like 4 hours, certainly during the week, pretty much almost every day, split up.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 hours a day, roughly. I have to watch every single Housewives. I love Below Deck Med. I watch all of Shaws of Sunset. I watch Summer House. I watch Vanderpump Rules. But then I have to watch, not have to, I mean, I'm not really forced to, but I want to be the best reality check show host that I can. So I watch Love Island, which is on every single night of the week. I watch Big Brother, which I'm obsessed with. I watch The Circle. I watched Love is Blind, Too Hot to Handle. I mean, if there's a reality show coming out, pretty much guaranteed I'm watching it.
Now, as representative of Bravo, you have to deal a lot with these Bravo celebrities, interviewing them, hanging out with them. For that one digital series, you were acting as their assistant.
Yeah.
And, also going to the events and the appearances and hanging out in the green room. You have to develop your own idea of who you like, who you dislike. You also get to see the diva mentality or the undiva-like mentality behind the scenes. But you still have to work with these people and interview them, in honor of the fans. How do you kind of put your own personal feelings aside? And do you ever tell Andy, like, hey, can you just fire them?
I definitely have my opinions with Andy, for sure. I mean, the thing about the Housewives is just an entity alone. I mean, listen, no one has ever really been mean to me. I don't know if it's because I'm such a charmer or because of my position with Andy. They want to be nice, and most of them are just inherently nice people anyway, I gotta say. I mean, I know some maybe aren't, but they've all been very, very nice to me. I mean, I certainly have my opinions about certain shows, and I certainly feel like people could be fired maybe a lot earlier than they do. And listen, I talk to Andy about what I like or what I don't like, but the truth of the matter is, if I'm taking the time to talk about someone that I don't like, that just means that they're good TV. Because if you're spending the time to really like intellectualize and like, oh, I hate her, I hate her, I hate her, like the energy that you're putting towards these shows just goes to that's exactly what we want. Like that's why I'm so invested in this. It's clear, like good TV usually comes from people who I hate.
Yeah, that's very true. So if you look at when you first came in contact with Andy, when you guys joined forces, if you took a snapshot of that, life must look so different in terms of everything that you guys have accomplished. I keep saying you guys, and I have to take that out of my vocabulary.
I'm fine with it. I say that all the time. I'll be like, hey, man, what's going on? Like, I'll say that to women. Maybe I should get out of it, but it's just a colloquial thing we say, It's just,
I know, but how members of the community have talked to me about it, and so I'm being more receptive, and I realize what the issue with it is. But it's so ingrained.
So ingrained.
But life and your relationship must be so different. Both of you are so busy with projects together, and then your own projects going on. How have you been able to maintain that relationship in terms of business-wise and personal? Because you both are so busy, and life has definitely changed for you both.
You mean with each other or individually?
With each other, yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, I've been with Andy for 9.5 years. And certainly when I started, he's the type of guy that you want to impress. He still is that type of guy. I feel like everyone feels that way. And after 9.5 years, like, I still want to impress him wholeheartedly. He's actually coming on my People TV reality check show tomorrow.
Oh,
and
I love that.
I could not be more nervous for him to come on my show.
That's
This
funny.
is going to
That's
be such
funny.
a full circle. But listen, I mean, in terms of business, I said to myself, I'm not going to do anything but be his assistant for the first 3 years. I want him to know that I'm for him, that I am going to be the person who's in an hour before he comes in and be there an hour after he leaves. I mean, I really put in a lot of effort. It took a few years for me to even sort of start, get a real hang of the job to say to him, like, hey, maybe I'll start doing Ask Andy's and this and that. And then I kind of started to branch out and do my own thing. But I think the only reason I was able to do that was because he had trusted in me that I could do my job appropriately. It wasn't the first day on the job. I was like, let's take a selfie. Let's grow my Instagram followers. Like, that's not a professional thing. That was never in the cards for me. I never want that. I still barely want that. Like, it would be very uncomfortable. It's funny because we've sort of shifted into this, like, I'm in his inner circle now. I'm his assistant for sure, but I'm in this inner circle where I know his family, like I would go over to his parents probably and sleep over there if I wanted to. Me and his son have a special relationship. I'm always over there with the nanny. And I said to him, certainly at the top of quarantine, when COVID started to take over, I said to him, I was like, I haven't spoken to you a month and you don't need me. Like, is everything okay? I just want you to know that, like, I'm still here. And even though I'm in my apartment, like, I still got you. I got so nervous because he hadn't needed me in a while. And it was like this codependent relationship. And I said, just because we've been together for 9.5 years and we've smoked together and done these things. Like, I still want you to know, like, I view you as my boss. And he was like, you know what? I want you to think that. Like, he's like, I know that you're so anxiety ridden that you're never going to, like, disappoint me in this way. And he's like, I want you to think that. Like, it's a really good thing that you always want to think of me as your boss, even if we're starting to become a little bit more friends. It's good. It keeps you honest, keeps you good at your job. And it's true. I've always had that. And so I try not to make mistakes, even though it's somewhat easier and harder in quarantine. But we've definitely blurred and blended the lines, but in my mind, I never wanted to take advantage of that. And I always just wanted to say to myself, like, he's giving me a shot and I want to prove that I can take this shot appropriately.
I've tried to impress Andy so many years. I've sent him, I don't know how many nudes in his DMs and no response.
Why don't you send me those nudes?
Girl, scissoring isn't a thing.
I'll give you a response. It might not be the response you want, but I'll give you a response.
Like, category is 10, 10, 10. All right. Are you ready to play a little rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Okay. Your favorite worst TV show that you have binge watched during quarantine? Not for work.
But it's got to be a bad show. Like, it's just bad. Oh God. I've binged so many. Oh no, this is going to be hard. Jersey Shore Family Vacation.
Okay. Housewife alum you would love to see come back into the franchise full time.
Phaedra Parks.
Oh, girl, somebody needs to rescue her from marriage boot camp. Okay. What would your drag name be?
Oh my God. What would my drag name be? That's a really good one. I mean, the truth of the matter is I could use my name because it's a dude's name anyway.
Yeah,
so
that's really true.
My drag king name would be like Mr. Carpenter or something like that. Like, it would be very business like. I'd come out in a suit and a stash and really rock them.
I love it. Okay. Worst date.
Worst date I ever went on was one where I asked a girl, it was like a second date, and she asked me what my favorite song was of all time. And then during that date, she got up there and sang the song to me, serenaded the song to me in front of all of her friends. And I had to, like, pretend to be impressed. And I really, really wasn't, because the song's like kind of special to me. And she kind of like botched it so horribly. And I just really couldn't save face there.
See, I would think that was romantic. And if it was like a rom-com, that would be like one of the best scenes of the movie.
I know you want it to be romantic, and I wanted it to be romantic too, but not second date. Not in front of all of your friends, and like,
okay.
Wait to let the moment fester. Don't impress me too much. Like, come on.
Yeah. Okay. What reality show would you cast yourself on?
Oh my, Big Brother. I totally would be on Big Brother. If I was single, I would be on Love Island.
Okay.
And if I really wanted to test my, like, survival skills, I'd be on Alone. which is on the History Channel.
I would get so bored. I'd end up singing show tunes the whole time. They wouldn't be able to use any footage because they wouldn't be able to buy the rights to Hamilton.
That's so true. That's so true.
Okay, Darren, where do you want our audience to find you and follow you and stalk you?
Find me, follow me, send me Alex Rodriguez's, dick pics if you'd like. I want to see everything that's out there. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carpe Darren. You can find Scissoring Isn't a Thing, as well as Martinis and Murder, my other podcast, anywhere you get your podcast. We come out with new episodes of Scissoring every Tuesday, so be on the look for that. On Facebook, I'm at Daryn Carp.
Oh my God. I literally could have talked to you forever and ever. That has been Daryn Carp, and that is our episode. I'm your host, Alexander, host and lead writer for Metrosource Magazine. You can follow me on Instagram at Alexander's On Air, and you can binge listen to all of our episodes featuring your favorite celebs from our issues. Until next time, stay true and do you, boo. That has been another Metrosource Mini. Like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast player, and check out the latest issue of Metrosource Magazine on newsstands or online at metrosource.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram at Metrosource, and on Twitter at Metrosource Mag. Until next time, stay fabulous.